The Notre Dame Cathedral, let's talk about the tragedy, let's talk about the money involved, let's talk about preserving our history. Welcome to Mike's Morning Mug from Haunted Road Media. I'm author and ghost story Mike Ricksecker. Explore with us. I'm out here today in the cold, in the wind, about to rain, and maybe that's appropriate for what I'm about to talk about, which is the tragedy that we just had with the Notre Dame Cathedral. And yes, they were able to save a part of it, and they talk about we were able to preserve it. But to me, that is still a great loss, that we lost that wooden structure of that cathedral. 850 years of history that is just gone. And yes, it is fantastic. We still have the bell towers, fantastic. We still have, the flying buttresses and the stone structure of the cathedral, some things inside, of course. But losing the wooden structure is actually a great tragedy. And one of the things that we talk a lot about here at Haunted Road Media is the restoration and preservation of haunted historic locations. Now, I'm not going to get into the hauntings of Notre Dame Cathedral today. That's not the point of this video, although there are many people who do say that there are some hauntings that go on there. What I want to talk about is preserving our history. Of course, that's something that we talk about actually quite a bit on Haunted Road Media is restoration of historic places, preservation of historic locations, trying to make sure that these places are not lost to time. And things like the Notre Dame Cathedral, I mean, it's once in infinity. It can never be done again. Sure, they're going to go ahead and restore it, and they're going to rebuild it. They're talking about a 5-year plan, which many people think is very ambitious. Of course, they want to have that in place for the Olympics in 2024, but you can never truly reclaim what had once been. They're talking about rebuilding the spire and what that may look like. If the spire was a little bit newer piece of construction onto the Notre Dame Cathedral, but still very historic in and of itself. We could go into all kinds of conspiracy theories about what may or may not have happened there at the Notre Dame Cathedral. Now that this tragedy has happened, they have in excess of over 700 million. There'll be conspiracy theorists that go on with that. Right now they're saying that it was probably a short circuit underneath the spire somewhere that started this off. Of course, they were in the middle of a big restoration project. But let's take a look at that restoration project, $6.8 million, which is a sizable chunk of money, of course. But if you look back at the history of this restoration project, you'll see a couple of years ago in different articles like the New York Times, they were talking about needing $120 million to do the work that was required on Notre Dame. That's a real sizable chunk of money, of course, but they're saying that it was in dire need of repair, that so many pieces of it were crumbling that it was on the verge of falling apart. 120 million. This current project was 6.8 million, which means they didn't have all that money that they said that they needed in order to be able to actually restore this. You take into consideration cost overruns and things like that, and you're talking over 120 million. 6.8 million pales in comparison to that. Now, after it's burned, boom, over $700 million. That's a lot of money in just a couple days. My question is, where was that money beforehand? It's great. I'm not gonna demean it by any means whatsoever. It's great that people are coming forward, willing to contribute the money now that it's burned. But that's a reactive response to this tragedy. It took an 850-year-old historic site to burn for us to be missing that now, for people to be like, oh, we need to put some money in this. People should have been proactive before when they're talking about needing 120 million before to restore Notre Dame. People should have taken heed back then to contribute that kind of money. The 700 million, again, is great, but it's completely reactive. We need to be a lot more proactive about our historic locations, or things like this will continue to happen. In recent years, I've seen some fantastic locations burn to the ground. Notre Dame, fortunately, was spared. It wasn't completely burned to the ground, but Goldenrod Showboat, fantastic haunted historic showboat, last of its kind. That was an arson fire. Emmett House in Waverly, Ohio, another one. The Fort Chaffee Field Medical Complex in Arkansas, another fantastic historic location, gone. We keep losing these places more and more and more, and we cannot replace them. Concerning the Goldenrod Showboat, couple of days after it happened, I put out a video about haunted history being destroyed, and really to me that was a murder of the showboat.
The showboat itself had its own persona. It had its own life. Even though it's an inanimate object, it had its own soul. And that soul was to tell the tale of that period of time along the Mississippi River. Burning and destroying a piece of history is not it. History will remember you as a piece of shit, but you save it and preserve it, history will remember you as a hero.
The Fort Chaffee Medical Complex, I saw it with my own eyes. We were actually headed through there the day after it burned down. We stopped in, really just to have a look, and the fire picked back up while we were there. We had just investigated out there like a month and a half beforehand, if that, and so it was just jaw-dropping to see the utter destruction of this fantastic historic location.
Here we are at historic Fort Chaffee. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's burned down. In fact, it's actually rekindled now, and we have actually flames coming up in the back side of the property.
See, that spread quick. It was just right over in that little corner.
Ariel, come over here. Come like right here. Yeah. Yeah. You're going a little far. Right there. Right there. Wow.
We're going to have another big fire.
So when we hear about these locations that need our help, that need this restoration work done, don't just pawn it off on the side like, oh, well, others will contribute to that. Other people will take care of that. The money will come from somewhere. There are government organizations that'll take care of that. There's a grant that they could find. Stop yourself right there and realize they're not going to do it. That's the track record. They just don't do it. That money has to come from outside. All this money that's going into Notre Dame is private donors. It would have been great if they would have stepped up beforehand when they were talking about needing the $120 million. It would have been great if somebody would have stepped up to save the Goldenrod Showboat and the other locations. These places need this type of money or they are gone. Haunted Road Media, we do a little bit with what we can through the book sales to help some of these different historic locations, but it's going to take everybody, a concerted effort. A couple dollars from somebody over here, a few dollars from somebody over there. All of it adds up, because if we don't do it all as a collective whole to save these locations, then as a collective whole it is gone and obliterated for everybody. We had a real scare here with Notre Dame. We almost lost the entire thing. Thankfully we did not, but there's a huge part of history that is now gone and we will never have back again. Let's not let this happen to other historic locations. And if you want to learn more about what happened with the Goldenrod Showboat and the Fort Chaffee Field Medical Complex, please check out our other videos off to the side. I'm Mike Ricksecker. Till next time.